Math champs, just saying hello. We are going to walk you through one problem together, and that will help you kind of set up your future proportion problems. So your goal is to reorient images, and that will help you solve the proportion. We are doing, I believe it's number 12 in your Google Doc together. By the way, this is my cat, so we just thought we would say hi before we got started. So problem originally looks like this. You've got two triangles. Now I mentioned a minute ago that you will need to reorient them. So we want to essentially like flip them, rotate them, make them look, that way they're facing the same direction. That will help us to identify sides that are in the same kind of relative position. So I'm going to scroll down here or slide down. I've essentially reoriented. What I like to do is I keep my first image just as is. That's just how I work out of habit. You could have reoriented the first. I chose instead to, like I said, keep the first, reorient the second. So this is where kind of some rotations come into play. I thought about sliding this 30 clockwise, and that's going to land me here. The first side length that I was more easily able to see is this longer one, not a hypotenuse because we don't know that that's 90 degrees, but it's kind of across from that close to 90 degree looking angle. So I was able to label 6x minus 6 first, and then I slowed down to think a little bit more carefully about where 30 and 42 went. Okay. Now we want to set a proportion. Going back, this kind of a side note, if you were to set up a proportion, in my case, I have, let's say there's 27 students. We could set that up like this, 27 students to one teacher. Wow. So if we were to kind of double that class, and have 54 students, to keep that same ratio, we would have 2 teachers. Okay, I use this ratio because it actually comes into play when you start to look at like post-secondary schools, colleges, 2-year programs, anything like that. You'll want to know what is the instructor or teacher to student ratio. So we wrote this as students as the numerator and then teachers. Okay, another way we could have done this is we could have said 1 teacher to 27 students. What you'll notice is that students has to be in the numerator on both sides of your equation, as does teacher. Both have to be in the denominator in this equation. So I'm going to go down. I've set a proportion here where I'm starting with my x because I know I'm going to need that somewhere in here because I'm solving for x. So 6x minus 6, that is compared to 49. Now in my case, I also did 30 compared to 35. Now, pause for a second and think about what your other proportion could be. In other words, you have 6x minus 6 over 49. And now how would you use the 63 and 42? Notice that I went this way. You're going to end up going that same direction. Okay? So now we move on to this cross multiplication. You could solve this without cross multiplication, would just potentially be a little bit more challenging algebraically. So we're going to use that cross multiplication in this case. 49 times 30. I've set it up over here. And now this is 35 times the quantity of 6x minus 6. I'm actually going to throw that in parentheses. That reminds me that that 35 is going to be distributed to both of those terms. Okay, and we see that happening right here. Distributing, simply multiplying on the right. We see subtraction, so we're using the addition property of equality on both sides. I've got some multiplication here. 210 is my coefficient, so 210x. Multiplication is happening, so I'm using my division property of equality. So I think that x is 8. Now, let's loop back to the original problem and think about what does that actually mean when we get x equals 8. We could plug 8 in here, and then our sides would become proportional. And I go ahead and I do that. I keep my same proportion that I originally used. 6 times 8 minus 6 gets me 42. 49 remains in the denominator. And I want to see if this is a true statement, that if in fact the left equals the right. So when I just plug into a calc 42 divided by 49, I get 0.86. Now, I'd be hoping that on the right side, I would also get 0.86. 30 divided by 35 is 0.86. That is true, so I'm correct. Okay. Just looping back to this example here where we had students divided by teachers. We could also have done 49 divided by 6x minus 6 is some other proportion. Okay. So if you're comparing your work to a friend's, you might set up your proportions differently, but you both should end with x equals 8, and you both would check your work and make sure that you have a true statement. Okay. Hope that helps you with the next few questions. Thanks for bearing with me and my tech. I wanted to write on my computer screen in a program, but was having trouble doing that with the mouse, so I went old school. Again, reach out and good luck.